Welcome back, guys, to another class of Mo Money School, the school that teaches you everything that school should have taught you. I'm your professor, Chris Mo. For today's class, I'm going to teach you something about credit. Now, before we go ahead and start digging into the whole financial world, before you start investing your money, before you start putting your money to work for you, you have to know the basics. I tell everybody, relax. Don't try to go ahead and start investing your money. Don't try to play this game of life, this game of the finance world too early. Starting too early is gonna mess you up. You wanna go ahead and do this correctly. That's why when I'm picking out these courses, I'm really teaching you the basics. I wanna go ahead and rewire your brain. That way, when it comes to really putting your money, when it comes to getting advice from somebody, when it comes to seeing what's happening around in the world, you know exactly what's going on. Nobody can fool you, and you won't be listening to the wrong people. As you may or may not know, credit is really, really important. If you don't start early and you don't do it correctly, you're gonna be at a disadvantage. Majority of you were probably introduced to credit the same way I was. When my mom told me about credit, she told me, don't spend money that you don't have. She told me that credit is really, really important because that's what helps you get a car, get a house. Besides that, she didn't know how you got good credit. She didn't know who gave you good credit or exactly how the game worked. So I did a little investigating myself. So what I want to go ahead and cover today is the 5 W's. A lot of you might be familiar with this. It's the what, why, who, when, how. What I want to go ahead and do today is teach you the basics. That way you know exactly what's going on with credit, how do you use it to your advantage, and how does it all work in this world. That way, when you're asked certain questions, you're not left in the blank, or when a financial advisor or a banker or somebody else is trying to sell you something is trying to fool you, or you're trying to apply for a loan, you know exactly what's going on. You know, in this world, it's so sad that a lot of people don't really understand the credit game. You know, majority of us aren't taught anything in school. Our parents barely even know the credit game. So what I want to go ahead and do is close a little bit of that. That way you guys are familiar with how credit exactly works. So the first W, what is it? As I mentioned before, credit is really, really important. Credit, if you want to think it in easy terms, is just a financial report card for how you're doing with your finances. Banks keep track of you and they send it to certain people, certain companies to go ahead and report this to see if you're financially credible. What they want to go ahead and do is see if you're a responsible person. Majority of us are responsible, but when it comes to banking, when it comes to investors, they don't want to give their money to just anybody. They want to make sure that when they're giving somebody money, they're going to get it back. Now, the way they keep track of this is by reporting to 3 different agencies exactly what your habits are like, what you're doing correctly, and they put it on a scale. They put it on a scale anywhere between, say, 300 to 850. That is the common credit score that's used in regards of all of them. Majority of you might be familiar with this or might be familiar with the term called FICO. Now, not sure if many of you guys know this, but there's several systems when it comes to determining your credit score. But the most commonly used is the FICO score. It's based off a 300 to 850 score. Obviously, the higher your credit score is, the higher the probability that you'll get approved for your car, your home, or your loan. This is important because when it comes to applying for your credit, when it comes to applying for a new loan or getting a new credit card, you want to know exactly where you're standing on, because if you stand on the lower scale and you're applying for a higher credit card, you might not get approved. Or when you're trying to apply for a loan or refinance on your mortgage, you might not get approved. Majority of people don't know this. For the next W is who determines your credit score. We know that it's from a score from 300 to 850. But who's in charge of this? Is the government in charge of this? No. The government is not in charge of any of this. They do keep an eye on companies to make sure they're not doing any fraud, to make sure that they're not stealing people's identities. But besides that, they don't really care. There's very few regulations on these 3 companies. And these 3 companies are called Experian, TransUnion, and Equifax. These 3 companies are the companies who keep track of you. They have report cards on each and every one of you. They see everything that you've applied for. They see what you haven't paid, what you paid, where you lived, all your information. It's like they have the book of your whole entire life in their hands. Now, I'm not sure if many of you know this, but each of these three institutions each have their different score. They don't all follow the FICO score. They each have a different score. I don't know the ranges on top of my head, but they keep track of your whole entire life. These three companies, for some weird reason, decided to go ahead and keep track of you guys. Why? I'm not really sure. I didn't go that deep into history, but just know that these three companies are in charge of you. They can also sell your information. They sell your information to other lending institutions. They send it to other banking institutions. I'm not sure if a lot of you guys got something in the mail or ever thought about, why is it that a bank's trying to give me a credit card? Why is some company trying to give me a loan? It's because one of these three sold your information to another institution so that you can go ahead and try to apply for another loan. And as many of you know, the only way banks work is if they go ahead and get your money and they lend it to other people. That's the way banks make money. For the next W, why is it important? Why is having good credit important? Because when it comes to applying for a loan, when it comes to applying for a car or applying for a mortgage, you want to make sure that you have the best credit. If you don't have the best credit, you're going to get the shittiest loan possible. You're going to get high payments, a high interest rate, and you're going to be very unhappy. Majority of you might not even get approved. Starting your credit and learning how to use your credit correctly is going to go ahead and help you in the long run. And for some of you who are just getting started with your credit, you may or may not know that if you don't have good credit, it can also affect you when you're simply renting a house. You don't even necessarily have to just be buying a house. You could be just seeking a property that you're going to go ahead and rent. Now, companies, it's funny that they're getting a little bit more strict. They're seeing a correlation between individuals. When it comes to applying for a job, a lot of us are familiar with the regular interviews, but sometimes now higher companies that are really doing their research, actually go ahead and check your credit score. Because if your credit score is actually good, they'll see that you're a responsible person. You're a financially responsible person who doesn't have to be kept an eye on. So for those of you who don't have good credit and are trying to get a job, or at least a good job, you want to make sure that you actually do have good credit, because you might not even get that job. So credit goes a long way. Next W, when should you start your credit? You should start your credit as soon as possible. The earlier you start, the better. And I tell this for every one of my videos. The earlier you start learning, the earlier you start learning how money works, how to invest your money, how to build your financial security all together, it's going to benefit you in the long run. As soon as you turn 18 and as soon as you get a job, you should start building your credit. How do you start building your credit? There's multiple ways, but just to quickly go over it right now is apply for a credit card, get a secured card, or get a cosigner. The easiest way, if you're just 18, to go ahead and get approved for a credit. So if you haven't done so already and you haven't started your credit, you need to start today. I need you to stop this video, go apply for your credit card with the current bank that you have a checking account with, and get your credit card today. Because one of the determining factors that makes your credit good is the average length that you've held your credit. And if you have no credit, then you're behind. Specifically, if you were like me, I didn't start building my credit until I was 20 years old, and that's because I did a lot of mess ups. Besides that, guys, like, go ahead and start your credit today. Now, lastly, I know this isn't a W, but how often should we check our credit? A lot of people mess this one up because we know that we need to have credit. We know that we need to have a good credit score, and we know that 700 and above is good. That's all we know. But majority of us, and as I mentioned before, our awareness factor is really, really low. We're not aware of the things that are going around us. We're not aware of our money, and we're definitely not aware of our credit. You need to be paying attention to your money as much as you need to be paying attention to your credit. Like I said, credit is really, really important because it's going to be used later down the road when it comes to leveraging your debt and getting approved for a home and a car to your advantage. So when my students ask me, how often should I be checking my credit? You should be checking your credit on a consistent basis. Why? Because now we live in a world where technology controls everything. There's hackers hacking into every single thing possible nowadays. For the most part, if you haven't yourself experienced this, you may know somebody that's gone through credit fraud or identity theft. And that's because we live in a world where all of our information is up in the cloud. All of our information can easily be attained. There's not enough security, there's not enough government regulation that actually secures who we are. Which is why I tell my students, you need to go ahead and keep an eye on your credit. Every single month, at least one time, you need to be checking your credit. I always recommend using Credit Karma. Credit Karma is absolutely free. It doesn't give you the full details, but at least if somebody applies for something, you'll be able to see it. And if something is unfamiliar, you're able to go ahead and acknowledge it and fight it. Because if you don't fight it, whoever applied for that credit using your social is gonna mess you up. Now, I'm not sure if a lot of you knew this, but besides checking it on a monthly basis, you can actually check it on an annual basis as well. You can go ahead and get your whole credit report from the 3 credit bureaus. Due to the government, they allowed you to get your credit reports from each of the 3 bureaus. That way, you know exactly what's happening on with your credit. So if you go onto this website, annualcreditreport.com, you're able to go ahead and download your credit reports from each and every one of these bureaus. From there, you're gonna find all your information, your past addresses, the banks that you're locally in contact with, what you're financing, what have you applied for, what exactly is going on with your financial world. If you haven't done so already and checked your report, I suggest you go ahead and do this, and you do this on a consistent basis every single year, because then you're gonna go ahead and be aware of what's going on with your money, what's going on with your credit. Because if someone hacks to your information and they go ahead and apply for stuff, I kid you not, getting rid of that messed up score or getting rid of what they did is gonna give you a headache, it's gonna cost you money. So I tell my students, look, you gotta be aware of everything. You wanna make sure you know exactly what's going on with your money, exactly what's going on with your credit. So besides that, go ahead and download the Credit Karma app and go ahead and go onto this website and see exactly your whole annual report. So you see what's going on up to date. And if you find something funky, you need to go ahead and check it out. And that's it, guys. Besides that, those are the 5 W's when it comes to your credit. The who, the what, the when, the how, the why. You want to go ahead and know all this information because it's really, really important. Because when it comes to investing, when it comes to building your financial future, you want to make sure you have good credit. The earlier you start, the better. The less mess up you have, the better. And in my next course, I'm going to go ahead and teach you exactly how to build that credit. So if you haven't done so already, go ahead and subscribe to my channel, enroll in my class so you can be notified of when I put up that video. Hit the notification bell so when that video uploads, you know exactly when it's going up. And if you love this video, go ahead and like it for the YouTube algorithm so everybody else can go ahead and see it and join my class. Like I said, this class is built to go ahead and teach you everything that the school system didn't teach you. We're going baby steps. That way nothing is lost. And if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, go ahead and comment below. I also have an Instagram and I have a Twitter, riseandgrind.mo, where you can follow me. I post pretty much on my Instagram all the time, so you can see me there and see what I'm up to on a consistent basis. I also do have another channel called Chris Mo's Journey, where it's kind of like a blog and I just go ahead and talk about my life and what's going on. Besides that, guys, I'll go ahead and see you next class because class is dismissed now.